Have you ever not known the answer to a really important question? Maybe it was trying to remember your social security number. Maybe it was the date of your wedding anniversary, which means you were in a lot of trouble. Maybe it was trying to answer a security question in order to reset your password on an account, which I do about once a month. At some point, we've all felt stumped by a question. Last week, we began addressing a really important, really controversial question in our culture. Can faith and science coexist? And many of us feel stumped by this question. But this question isn't just about a singular faith. And that's because our faith encompasses all kinds of things. So when we question faith, what we're really questioning is all the different aspects of our faith. Let me show you what I mean. There are questions raised by science that seem to create a very real problem with some important parts of the Christian faith, especially when it comes to some of the stories found in the Bible. And these stories inspire questions like, was the earth really created in 6 days? If there was a worldwide flood, why do some experts say maybe not? Does evolutionary theory prove that God didn't really create everything the way we think? Is it even possible that a guy named Jonah really survived 3 days in the stomach of a large fish? And there are all kinds of biblical stories just like these, which is maybe why this whole topic makes you nervous in the first place. Because there are plenty of stories or topics where the Bible seems to say one thing and science seems to say another. Plus, science is physical. It's tangible. We can see its results. Science is the reason we have great things like medical advances that help fight diseases. So where do we go with our questions? No matter how hard we try to just believe, science seems to state facts that stand opposed to the things we were taught to believe. And let's be honest, some of these facts are difficult to argue with. That's where things get complicated. And when we don't have the answers to tough questions, we may begin to question what we believe. We think, do I have to turn off my brain in order to believe in God? Do I have to ignore everything science says that seems to conflict with what I believe? Do I have to ignore what science proposes, even when it seems like there's a lot of evidence to back it up? These are big questions, but here's the good news. God doesn't demand that you disengage your mind when you follow Him. God never intended for us to ignore science in order to place our faith in Him. In fact, last week we said that science demonstrates how the who, God, created everything. Science can actually show just how incredible God is. Questions are key to building our faith. And this is important to remember as we move forward. God is not afraid of your questions, and He's not surprised by science or when it seems like science conflicts with the Bible. If you're new to church, this might surprise you. You may have been taught being a Christian is just about blindly following a bunch of beliefs or never asking questions. Maybe this has even caused you not to trust in Jesus because you just couldn't make sense of certain unanswered questions. If that's you, then today is for you. Because here's the thing. If being a Christian required us to have all the answers first, we'd all be in trouble. The reality is that there may always be things that we don't have clear answers to. Or, at the very least, we'll have questions that will likely take us years of study to understand. We may never know the full details of the biblical flood. We'll probably never be able to figure out exactly how all of creation was formed. We may never fully understand how Jonah lived in a belly of a fish for 3 days. We may spend years learning and still have questions on how creatures have adapted and changed throughout time. With enough time and study, we'll probably have answers to a lot of our questions, but some questions may remain a mystery. But here's the really cool thing. Chasing down the mysteries in life and searching for answers to big questions doesn't contradict our faith. Instead, our pursuit of answers can actually enhance our faith. Throughout history, people have questioned plenty of things about God and the Bible. And asking questions didn't mean that they didn't have faith. It meant that they were learning more about the God behind creation. Science has helped explain many things that reshaped the way we understood stories and accounts passed down by people for thousands of years. For example, Galileo was a famous Italian scientist who lived in the 1600s. Among other things, he invented a telescope that was able to see deep into space. This telescope confirmed what only a few brave scientists had dared to suggest. The Earth was not the center of the universe. But at that time, this discovery was considered dangerous by many Christians, especially leaders of the church. They believed this view went directly against Scripture. Galileo famously said, "I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who has endowed us with senses, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego their use." In other words, God made our brains, and we can use these brains to better understand the world He has made, even if it means rethinking old, accepted concepts. Galileo realized that our faith is built on a person, not a view or a single explanation. Learning something new in science doesn't have to discount our faith, because our faith has always been about the person controlling the universe, not our understanding of how he did it. The church in the 1600s was afraid of what Galileo discovered because they were focused more on their understanding of Scripture instead of the God behind it. So when science challenged an idea they had always believed, church leaders feared that people's faith would all fall apart as a result. But the truth is, there will always be aspects of life and creation that challenge our beliefs, but it doesn't have to destroy our faith. In fact, these challenges can grow our faith in a new way, because even when we don't see the how, we can still be connected to the who behind it. The Apostle Paul wrote something about this very idea. Here's what he said. "The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." This is an incredible insight. Paul is saying that Jesus was present at the start of creation. In Jesus, the whole world was created. He was behind it all and in it all. Jesus, a real man who really lived 2,000 years ago, was present before everything existed. Not only that, he's the one holding all of creation together today. And that's important because we don't normally think of Jesus as being there at the beginning. We see creation as being a story about God and the cross as being about Jesus. But Paul is saying Jesus was there at the start. So when we put our confidence and trust in Jesus, in the who, we're trusting him for the details of creation, even the details from the beginning of time that we may never fully know. No one questions whether Jesus actually lived. One of the most important historians ever, Josephus, who was not a Christian himself, wrote about Jesus and his life. So the question isn't whether he lived, but whether we believe he is who he says he is. See, our faith isn't built on being able to prove theories about how God created the universe or whether traditional understanding of specific events is completely accurate. Instead, our faith is built on a person who we believe is the God behind all scientific understanding. Not just someone we imagine exists, but someone who real people saw in real life and then documented in Scripture. When we put our trust in Jesus, who was there at creation and is continuing to hold all of creation together today, and we believe that he is at the center of everything, even if we don't have an explanation for how it works, it means that we can keep searching for answers and exploring our world without having to abandon or ignore faith in Jesus. Simply put, you can trust someone before you know everything. When you learn something new that doesn't necessarily line up with what you've read or heard in church, it doesn't mean you have to walk away from the person behind the faith you have. It just means you get to know him even better. We're never going to have all the answers to every question raised about what we believe. But that doesn't mean we have to walk away from our faith. Knowing that you may never have explanations to all of your questions doesn't mean that you should stop asking them. Just because you choose to trust Jesus, it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your intelligence. In fact, here are two big takeaways from what we're talking about today. First, you should ask questions. God welcomes your questions. You don't have to turn off your brain in order to be a Christian. Use it. Being a Christian isn't about having all the explanations to everything you wonder about. God is completely okay with your doubts, your questions, and your exploring of the science behind how He created everything. God actually created your brain, so He's more than okay with you using it to better understand the rest of His creation. And second, you can trust Jesus. Maybe you've felt guilty about the doubts or questions you've had about faith due to what you've learned about science. But you don't have to feel that way anymore. Our faith is built on Jesus, not on having all the explanations. Maybe you've thought that trusting Jesus means that you can't question certain stories in the Bible, or certain things you've thought Christians have always believed. What if that's not the case? Would you give faith a chance if you knew it was more about a person than an explanation? Our faith is built on the fact that Jesus, who really lived and who is alive today, is also the God who created everything. Our faith is in a person, who that person is, and what that person did. How does this truth change the way you think about what it means to be a Christian? My hope is that it helps you build a faith that will last through the questions that science raises. My hope is that when you're confronted with hard questions, you'll remain confident in the person of Jesus. You don't have to shy away from hard questions. Instead, you can explore them and still keep your faith intact. Remember, your trust is in the person who is behind all of creation and holds it all together. And that doesn't have to change no matter what you encounter.